about the hip and the billies and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. This time we we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This time we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the hip and the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. Country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation. This time we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This time we the fear. Nobody give it to no Guatemala. This time my name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the hip and the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland. Will never give it up to another nation.
With a live stream from XTV Belize Facebook page and XTV Belize YouTube. This is how we make sense of the news. I'm the producer and host, Sister YaYa, Marin Coleman. You know, I got a good troublemaker brother as the co-host. Revolutionary brother Mutota from out of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And yes, he bring another one I Trinidad brother with him. Good troublemaker too. We have Breddah Doc Wayne Kublalsingh. You know, I hear about him. What I tell you, you know, call the people in. Share this link. I serious. This is a regular Sunday review. Welcome, Brother Akko, Brother Wayne. How are you doing this morning, Brother Akko?
Well, Sister YaYa, thank you and welcome to our guests and to our viewers on Sunday Review once again.
How you feel this morning, Brother Wayne?
I'm good. I feel like a Raja this morning. I'm dressed up to go to a wedding, hence my beautiful
So to get the best eye, blade right up.
Right.
Traditional Indian clothing. Very good. Okay, Brother Akko, where are we getting Caribbean news stories from this morning?
So this morning we have from Trinidad and Tobago, of course, Barbados, Haiti, Cuba, Jamaica, Guyana, and Venezuela. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do all of them, so we will begin. So I'll sort of read some of the headlines and try to make sense of it. The first one that we have is actually from Venezuela. And given what we've been seeing and hearing in the regional and international media, we felt it important to sort of give a perspective from Venezuela's point of view of what is happening in the country. So there is an interview, which is long. I can't read the entire interview, but it's by a Venezuelan political theorist called Atilio Boron. He's a theorist and political analyst, and he lives in Venezuela. And the headline is Venezuela Geopolitics Resistance. It's geopolitics resistance and a battle for Venezuela. And I think the geopolitical aspect of his perspective is very, very important. The headline begins with, thanks to Venezuela's alliances and its global connections, the country is far from isolated. For these reasons, I believe the worst case scenario can still be avoided. But if Venezuela is attacked, one thing is certain, there will be unity and the will to defend the homeland. And he's asked a number of questions, and he begins by stating that for decades, Washington largely relied on soft power to manage the hemisphere. What we are witnessing now, however, is an open display of brute force, brute military force. I would even dare say, although this is a deeper study, that this is the largest imperialist air naval military buildup in our region since the October 1962 missile crisis that involved Cuba. Let's look at the numbers. In 2000, total trade between, or before, okay, let me go back a bit. Why because the world system is undergoing a dramatic transformation. There is no returning to the global landscape of 15 years ago. New actors have emerged with a decisive weight, fundamentally reshaping geopolitics. Take China. In the late 20th century and even at the start of this century, US strategists hardly took it seriously. I recall attending a major international seminar in Buenos Aires in the late 1980s, where US economists projected that China would only begin to matter around 2030. History has proved them spectacularly wrong. Let's look at the numbers. In 2000, total trade between Latin America and the Caribbean with China was about 12 million a year. By 2005, the year the US-led free trade agreement of the Americas was defeated in Mar del Plata, that figure had already jumped to 50 billion. By 2024, according to the Economic Commission for Latin America, ECLAC, it had reached approximately 538 billion. This alone helps explain why US foreign policy today can be summarized in 3 words: keep China out. But the problem for Washington is that keeping China out is no longer possible. China is already the main trading partner for Brazil and Chile, likely for Colombia as well, and the second largest for Mexico and Argentina. And globally, China maintains significant economic ties to trade investment of both with more than 140 countries around the world. China is here to stay. First, it is important to understand the new situation in the region. Unlike the 2000s, when progressive governments confronted the imperialist order openly and in a relatively unified bloc, today the landscape is more mixed. There was indeed a conservative reflux, but the old status quo was never fully restored, and new progressive dynamics have emerged. Washington is desperately trying to assemble a new anti-Venezuela, anti-Cuba, anti-Nicaragua axis. It leans heavily on figures such as Argentina's Javier Milei, El Salvador's Nayib Bukele, and the narco-linked Daniel Noboa in Ecuador. So this is a kind of perspective. As I said, I read excerpts from it. And it is contextualized in the perspective of the geopolitics of the region. And the fact that the empire imperialist US is trying to reassert itself in a world that has changed significantly. So I think it was important to understand that coming from the context of the Venezuela population, Venezuela thinkers, and so they have analyzed this in the context of the emerging geopolitical trends that has Washington extremely worried. The next article I would read is from, again, has to do with what happened in Trinidad recently. And one of our guests, and this comes out of Barbados, one of our guests a couple of weeks ago on this show had his visa revoked. The headline is, US revokes Gary Abu's visa. And the Prime Minister of Trinidad rejects claims of intimidation. Secretary of the Fishermen and Friends of the Sea, Gary Abu, says his United States visa has been revoked. Abu told The Guardian he received an email from the US Embassy on Wednesday informing him of the decision. We are writing to notify you that your B1, B2 visa for travel to the United States has been prudentially revoked. This email is considered official notification. The embassy said it took the action based on information that became available after the visa was issued, indicating that he may be inadmissible to the United States and therefore ineligible to receive a visa. Abu explained that he attained a US visa at the age of 15, and there can never be any issues, or should never have been any issues. In a media release yesterday, Abu attributed the revocation of his US visa to his decision to speak out against the US strikes on suspected drug smuggling vessels in the Caribbean, including the suspected killings of 2 Trinidad and Tobago nationals. If the global community recognizes these killings as unlawful, why does our own leader endorse them? And if the United States possesses intelligence identifying these alleged narco-terrorists, then evidence should be presented before a court, not used to justify missiles fired in international waters, Abu said. And so again, we are seeing the US using its power to dictate who it wants to speak, because this is clearly an attack on someone who has no beef or grievance with the United States based on what we know of him and what he has said. We also see something similar happening in Guyana recently, in which the leader of the opposition was also indicted in the United States for supposedly drug trafficking. Another move by the United States again in our region to silence voices that it doesn't like. Out of Barbados, again, while we're on Barbados, Barbados has a problem which I think the Caribbean need to really be paying attention to. We know that crime has increased throughout the Caribbean, and in many instances, the image of Barbados was that it was a place that we could not see that kind of violent crime. And over the last couple of years, we have been seeing increasingly acts of crime unprecedented in Barbados history. And this one is very alarming, which I think the Caribbean need to pay attention to. The headline is confronting masked riders on illegal bikes. The Commissioner of Police says Barbados must confront the growing trend of masked riders on unregistered motorcycles. A combination he described as a deliberate disguise for criminals who want to move unseen, strike quickly, and vanish before the public can identify them. The Commissioner Boyce pointed to Wednesday's murder at President Kennedy Drive and the subsequent shootout in Goodland as an example of how the disguises are being used. Two gunmen were not only armed, they were concealed from head to toe, riding a motorcycle with speed and agility. The public saw it. Our officers experienced it firsthand. This is a method now being adopted by people who want to terrorize neighborhoods. Residents of both districts reported seeing the pillion rider firing while looking backwards, hoodie flapping and face covered. Commissioner said these were not random fashion choices. We reminded the public that the law already prohibits the wearing of face covering items in public. And so this is something that you're seeing in Barbados, in which young people, we don't know if male or female, are riding motorcycles covered from head to toe, committing acts of crime. And we know once it happens in one territory, you are likely to see it in another. This is a trend, therefore, that we do not want repeated, and therefore we should take notice of it. As the old saying goes, if your neighbor house is on fire, wet yours, because it most likely, the fire will most likely spread to your house. On Jamaica, as a result of the ongoing storm, there's an outbreak of leptospirosis in Jamaica. And it says Jamaica has declared an outbreak of the bacterial disease leptospirosis, suspected of causing 6 deaths following the devastation from Hurricane Melissa. This is caused because of the catastrophic flooding and landslides, with some 30 inches of rain falling. The resulting stagnant, contaminated water has created a breeding ground for the disease, officials said. And so this is something that the Caribbean needs to pay attention to, especially people who are traveling to Jamaica. Also, Cuba has also experienced what is called chikungunya as a result of the flooding that came as a result of Hurricane Melissa. Moving on to the next piece. So how am I doing at times to say, YaYa?
You have another 3-4 minutes.
All right, okay. So let me put this because I think we hear so many negatives from Haiti that I want to have something positive on Haiti. The headline is Haiti qualified for the World Cup, but the Trump administration says its fan base aren't welcome. The Trump administration will not grant any special exceptions for Haitian soccer fans hoping to travel to the US to follow their team at next year's FIFA World Cup, according to the State Department. Haiti, which this week qualified to compete in the Men's World Cup for the first time since 1974, is covered by a travel ban President Trump signed in June. The proclamation restricts people from 19 countries from entering the United States, while including exemptions for players and their families, coaches, and support personnel to participate in major sporting events. But the State Department confirmed on Friday that this exception will not apply to Haitian fans, or spectators. Very, very sad that the government of the US under Donald Trump decided not to allow Haitian soccer fans to support their team in the World Cup. And I would read the last one here, which is from Cuba, and then we can move on. And the headline is Havana prepares to host the largest trade fair in the Caribbean from November 24th, which is tomorrow, to 29th. The 41st Havana International Fair will take place with the aim of exchanging and informing national and foreign businesses about business opportunities, as well as Cuba's productive and export potential. At a press conference, Oscar Perez Fraga, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Trade and Investment, said this year's edition is taking place in a complex context characterized by the intensification of the U.S. government's economic, financial, and commercial blockade of Cuba, and the national situation aggravated by Hurricane Melissa's passage through the eastern part of the island. So this is it. Cuba is hosting a trade fair. Again, we always get a lot of negative news from the media, and this is something positive for the Caribbean to understand that in Cuba, life goes on despite the propaganda war that is currently and has been for the many decades against Cuba. So that is it, Sister YaYa.
Big thanks, Brother Aka. News from Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Haiti, Cuba, Jamaica, and again from Venezuela. Brother Aka, also on that World Cup win with the Haitian, it was a memorable day on the date, because it was on that date in 1803 that the last major fight in the Haitian Revolution happened, the Battle of Versailles. And so it was really from oftentimes we don't know that the really spirit make we people win the Haitian Revolution, and they show up again. So regardless of what happened on the physical realm, sometimes we have to trust the process and the intervention of our African ancestors and ancestors. So Haitian people really connect in our way differently than we did. For a lot of people, I just think they were a football game, but it's their resistance. And still, just like our sisters and brothers in Cuba and Venezuela, who are consistently resisting at great sacrifice the oppression and horror of imperialist nations like the United States. Yeah, that's a big win for Alloway. Brother Wayne, tell me I'll leave it about yourself. Blade up for your wedding. We are going later. Tell us. No, I want to tell you exactly who you are, because I got big respect for you, Brother Akko, again, that the link. Humble beginnings, and how you have sacrificed your life and continue to sacrifice your life for the liberation of people in Trinidad and Tobago. So tell me what we know about you.
Well, good morning to you. I've just been listening to the stories about the Caribbean, and particularly Haiti. And, you know, Africa has always been under attack, even in the Caribbean countries. And Africa is under attack. I'm wearing my cosmopolitan suit, my Indian suit, but even India is under attack. Europe is under attack. Syria is under attack. And we have to keep Africa alive in the Caribbean. Its icons, its personages, its festivals, its ceremonies, its revolutionary spirit. These are, of course, everything of this is being attacked by a European and the empire. Well, you know the story. And I want to congratulate you, because I feel I am among friends. I feel among people who are keeping the flame of Africa alive in the Caribbean. And to just explain perhaps what probably people don't understand what I mean by Africa is under attack. We have a carnival here, like you do have a carnival. And in historical carnival, you had the icons, you had the Boko Jumbi, you had the characters of African peasantry and the religious tradition. But all of that is gradually being sort of sidelined for tinsel, for the ostentatious, for the ego. And when I say Africa has been attacked, I mean, in that way, the African spirit, the vitality, the ceremonies, and the festivals, and the language and the message of Africa are being attacked. And I think we need to keep it going. I didn't talk about myself, but I mean, I think that gives you a sense of where I stand in the historical trajectory of the Caribbean.
I definitely did not expect that response. So that's one good one. But you come from my radar. Thanks to Brother Akon and other people kind of share it. Recently, I write 2 articles in the Sunday Express dated November 7, 2025 and October 26, 2025. One was called Macaulay's Men and the other, A Real Narco State. Now, we're digging right in the next hour, but what are your process for come to a conclusion that I'm going to write this right now? Bold, just like how it got through my body, I want to write it. How do you come to that realization that this is the time to write what I write?
Well, I find that I'm very sensitive to what the empire does, imperialism, what it does. And I don't really think about what am I going to write about. The articles come to me, and the language comes to me, and a line comes to me. And following up on that line, the article comes out in response to something that's very pressing. And I think usually it has to do with oppression by empire or by the state. If you look at all of my struggles, about 15 or 16 of them, it has always been challenging and advocating against things which the empire has been doing or the state has been doing. I'm talking about the state of Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm always responding to that. And I think this article, basically what's happening here is a line came to me, which is Macaulay's Men. And that's sort of like an alliteration. So these are the lines come to me, Macaulay's Men. Here we are in a society where we have a state openly supporting an imperialistic venture, aggression against a friendly neighbor with whom we have historical, cultural ties and with whom we have very vital and future powerful economic interests for a nation which is running out of oil. That's we are. And yet you support the Americans. So I can't understand how a group of persons in the government, mostly East Indians and the attorneys and the advisors, could support this imperialist action. I mean, didn't we learn? Imperialism, bad. Anti-imperialism, good. It's there in the New World, it's in Latin America, it's there in Africa, it's there in India, it's there in Australia, it's there in Vietnam, it's there in the Middle East. That's the lesson of history. So how could you just so openly subvert the lesson of that history and think you'd get away with it? And therefore, I came to the conclusion that if you're challenging this Venezuelan state and supporting imperialism against it, a military campaign against it, something has to be wrong with you. And I began thinking about it, and I said maybe there is some kind of link between these people who are leading this cohort of people and something that happened historically. Now, Lord Macaulay was a British parliamentarian and a historian and an author. And he was living in a very exciting time in Britain when Britain was liberating itself from the authority of the king, the majesty, in the middle of the 19th century. And he had opened up the British power system to parliament. So you now had a full legislated official parliament. And that came hand in hand with an education system. And they opened up the whole of the British public to primary school education. They passed a series of education acts, one of the first things that they did. But they had India and the whole empire there, 5 million people. How are they going to deal with that? Lord Macaulay said, well, this is going to be too expensive to train all those Indian people. So what we have to do, we have to create a servant class, an intermediary class, brown in color, but British in taste and opinion and in intellect. And they began to ship a whole lot of educational apparatus, physical apparatus, geometry sets, schools, colleges, textbooks, languages, so that they thought that this class, this intermediary class, would be able to bring up the Indians to that culture. And I think I see a connection between that intermediary class in India, preferring the imperialistic ventures, preferring the British, preferring the BBC, preferring the CNN, preferring the Fox News to the history of revolution and suffering in the Caribbean and what's happening in Venezuela. So they have no identification, it seems to me, with what has happened in the Caribbean, the history and the suffering. They are latecomers. They came here in the 1850s or 60s. Sorry to talk about it that way, but they're latecomers. And they have no identification with that. They identify more with the Machiavellian ethic, what the BBC says. And so they basically sidelined Venezuela as some sites. They're basically following the playbook of the BBC and the CNN, etc. I hope I didn't talk too long.
No, you did well, Brother Akko.
Not at
Got
all.
5 minutes. You remember the first time you read or hear about Brother Wayne, Brother Akko?
Yeah, many years ago. It's more than 20 years, right? But the using Macaulay was a very important, if you want to call it, historical connection, in the sense that colonization have distorted the psyche and the mentality of all the groups it came into contact with. For those of us who live in the United States, you will hear people refer to those kinds of people who express this kind of obeisance to whites as Oreo cookies, okay? In the sense that they are black on the outside in terms of color and white on the inside, you know? I read a book by I think it's a young Indian sociologist, and I never realized that you had those kind of metaphors for Chinese and for people of Indian heritage who act contrary to what their historical and cultural alignments should be. And in that book, I don't remember his name now, young Indian sociologist, he referred to Chinese who act contrary to what how they should act as bananas. So we asked the question, why you call them bananas? He said the yellow on the outside, white on the inside. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the same, and his reference of Indians who acted was coconuts. He said they're brown on the inside, on the outside, but white on the inside. They act culturally in a certain way. And so when he made the connection to Macaulay, it brought me back to those descriptions of blacks in the US, like Clarence Thomas, who they always call a Oreo, and others. So this, sociologically speaking, is what you may call a kind of interpretation or language of those who resist the colonization effort and label those who don't resist it. You give them a certain kind of context, you know? And what is happening, I remember Harry Belafonte calling Colin Powell when he lied about Iraq, calling him an Uncle Tom Negro, okay? And the media was very critical of Harry Belafonte for using that terminology to describe Colin Powell. How I interpret that is there's a language of resistance. And I think what Dr. Kublalsingh wrote about Macaulay's men is a language of resistance that they are trying to take out of the vocabulary of those who oppose certain forms of colonialism and neo-colonialism. So they try to make it look as if you are calling someone the N-word if you say Macaulay's men, or the N-word if you say you're an Oreo. But that is the language of what I call the oppressed, who in their own way find ways to what you may call it, denigrate those who are aligned with interests that don't represent the majority of the population. That would be my response.
Well said.
We'll take a quick break and come right back. I don't hardly got anything to say. This is Brother Akko and Brother Doc Wayne conversation. But I had to go and research Brother Doc Wayne because we don't know him. But one of the things where he said that serious revolutionary change means that you have to tackle the government. So man, I never hear this wording yet. I tell revolution. Is that mean the revolution pure? You know how the Rastafari don't got no salt in their pot? Okay, this is one of the realest color activists we are meeting here. I really have to give thanks to Brother Akko and to Brother Wayne, who are a very busy brother, but put a life on the line. Talk about hunger strike. Look at a play Breddah Doc Wayne, you know. On the stay tuned, we are come right back.
Technology in education is not simply about modern tools. It is about expanding human potential. When we introduce digital learning into our schools, we are helping our students develop critical thinking skills and skills in communication. We're increasing your creativity and problem-solving skills as well. And these are the building blocks of human development, and it helps in preparing young people to contribute meaningfully to their communities and to the wider world.
We have our first ever smart classroom. We extend our gratitude and appreciation for making our dreams become reality.
This smart classroom is going to be helping you guys to be able to put your thoughts together, to further develop greater ideas for the development of this country, for the development of yourselves as well. We are now investing with you guys. This investment, it is being done today, but the results, the fruits of it is not for today. So it is who apply themselves, who work hard, will be the future leaders and the future success stories of this country.
All right, when the one fun the hand, the window open and the light may turn off. It looks like you listen to me, Jamie.
Not only that, I even get a new coffee mug where keep my coffee hot all day.
I'm impressed. You don't look like you're so hard here.
Better than that, BL can change my meter to one of their new smart meter. They call it the AMI.
Oh, I hear about it on TV for BL. How do you know?
Yes, man. They don't reach the man better to change it right now. Let's go check it out.
Hey guys, I'm almost done here.
So that when you reach my area,
We're upgrading meters across Belize, house by house, business by business. Always look out for BL logo, uniforms, and IDs. BL will make you know when we're in the area. The EMI meter rollout is a part of BL strategy to modernize our energy services.
you don't need to come in at my house, right?
Come in your house, boss, only if you got something good for you.
BEL, bringing you a brighter tomorrow.
Want all the postpaid perks without the commitment? Now you can with smart supercharged prepaid plans. All the talk, text, and data you need. No contracts, no hassle. Pay upfront for your package and enjoy total freedom. No commitments. Just simple, flexible plans that fit your life. Pick your power, Core, Edge, or Prime. Prepaid plans ready when you ready. Commit to no commitments and get yours today. Dial 7526 or *100 #key, use the Smart app, or visit a Gimme Dollar agent to purchase today. Smart, bringing people together.
What made me want to start my journey in terms of owning a home was basically me having my own space, my own domain, and having something extremely special for my family. That feeling was indescribable. It was amazing, you know, moving in the first time, seeing all the new furniture, the new paint, the new accessories. I was amazed. Home for the holidays means to me bonding with my family, having an amazing time in the Christmas spirit. I would highly recommend Atlantic Bank's personal loans for home renovations because of what it did for me. I fixed my kitchen, I fixed my storage, I fixed my master bedroom, my showers, you name it, I fixed it.
Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
Tired of replacing light bulbs? LEDs are what you need. LEDs last up to 30,000 hours. That's 30 times longer than incandescent bulbs, and up to 8 times longer than compact fluorescents. So less changing and less trash. Planet Earth thanks you. And the LED experts at Brothers Habet and Habet will help you find the best LED solution with colors for every room and mood, starting as low as $6.95. You can even get LED strips for home, office, and industrial use. So say goodbye to fluorescent tubes forever. And because they use up to 90% less energy, you save money. Money you can spend on other things. So head to Brothers Habet or Habet and Habet today. You can also call, email, or Facebook us. Have a brilliant day.
Guatemala, this time we we have nobody do it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots.
Welcome back to Sunday Review with our co-host, Brother Mutota, and our guest today, real scholar activist, this Brother Wayne Kublalsingh. Really, that Brother Akko, I carry the show today. So, Brother Akko, start off with your line of reason with Brother Wayne.
Well, I want to hear what his response would be to what I said, the fact that colonization has distorted us, people of color, wherever we have come into contact with it, and has made us into something, not who we are, really. So when he spoke of Macaulay's men, it was a very important historical connection that he made there, which I think to some extent still resonates with us. You have heard me on many occasions being critical of this statement that a lot of Caribbean intellectuals make about the post-colonial Caribbean. We're not in no post-colonial. We are neo-colonial, which I've said. It's the same sort of what I call nonsense after Obama won to talk about post-racial society. The United States is not a post-racial society. It was built on racism and still maintains that system. And I think it's the same thing in the Caribbean, that we like to believe, we create these mythologies about who we are, and those myths, when you look at our economics, our social stratification, our politics, the myth die in that reality. And so when he spoke about Macaulay's men, right, it is the same sort of connection with the Black American and the Oreo cookie, right, or the person they call it Uncle Tom Negro, and so I wanted to more explore how more in the Caribbean, outside of this example that he gave, this Macaulay's mentality exists, if that is at all.
Well, the first point I would like to make is that ideology is shared. So when you have a dominant ideology, it is not only kept by the imperialists or the colonialists or by the king or the Raja, it is shared about the community. And usually this sharing involves a servant class. Not anybody subscribe to this ideology, but many people are afflicted by it. And I was just addressing those people who are the servant class. The servant class is basically the Macaulay class. And as I said earlier, we need to, as gently as I can, I will say it now, we need to eclipse that servant class to come back into a historical trajectory. Now, I have a lot of respect for people who are not Macaulayans. I have worked with them, and I will now boast about my history. I think this is where Sister wants me to go down the road, a little bit boasting about my own history. I first started as an activist when the government here was closing down the sugar industry, and I stood up for the workers and for the planters and the farmers, and I got together a whole lot of professionals, and we wrote something called the Carney Position Report, which presented a report saying, you don't have to close down the whole thing, we could reform it. I took it to the government and they say, fantastic, Wayne Kublalsingh, fantastic. And then they shut down the whole thing and shelved the report. All right? I think it was a bad economic move. And then it started this smelter and what they call a master gas plant, 13 heavy gas-based industries. Okay? 2 smelters, all of them owned by either the Americans, the Chinese, the Indians, the Brazilians, the Canadians, 13 heavy gas-based industries, and we had not the gas for it. A whole new era of neo-globalization, neoliberalization. But they fell for it. The Macaulayan men and Prime Minister at that time fell for it. And the people who challenged it were not the economists, were not the politicians, the intelligence on the ground. I could call their names, Mr. Sue, Mrs. Ashby, a midwife. His grandmother was a slave. She understood the importance of property to African people. Property, African property, land. He used to make his own sugar, you know. Mr. the fisherman in Claxton Bay, you don't know her, but Mr. Kishore Budram. So these are the people who protested. They're not Machiavellian men, they were against the state. And you want to hear Kublalsingh boast, 13 of these industries collapsed one by one, because I went from one community to the other, collapsing them. Who follow me, follow me. Who don't want to follow me, follow me. 2 smelters went, a steel mill, Carisal, Port, Indian steel mill. All of these things went, and that collapsed. And it was showing them, it was making an example to them. Don't mess with the people, ecological and economic and social assets, all right? And then we mentioned the hunger strike. When I went to the hunger strike, it was because of the same kind of nonsense again. So not everybody's a Machiavellian man. There is a strata of people who are revolutionary and who will wake up when the time comes and when they are woken to do the biz, as you say.
Well, I fully agree with that. I hope I didn't give you the impression that everyone, you know,
No.
Yeah, but because we have always had that resistance in Trinidad, 1937, you know, 1970, and so on, and also in the Caribbean. And this is the perennial struggle in the Caribbean. Those who want a different dispensation based on our own realities and our own history, and those who pursue a dispensation based on colonial and neo-colonial perspectives, you know. So we destroyed the sugar industry, right, in the pursuit of this neoliberal agenda, and we pursued an agenda of industrialization, which had no real, what I call, intention of serving our own economic and social interests. It was the elite, right, and the multinationals and the economic elites outside of the Caribbean, who always intend on seeing us as places to exploit. And so we pursue this Mickey Mouse, what I call, approach to industrialization. And the result of it, as you indicated, it is all collapsed. It's all a myth. And what I think we are not understanding, this is a lesson for the Caribbean, is that a price is paid by the ordinary people that you spoke about. A price is paid by people for these false pursuits, in a manner of speaking. And the poor, the working class, the ordinary people pay the price for it. You know, I was in Jamaica, about 2 months ago, in August. Yeah, I went there for this Marcus gathering. And I was looking at these big hotels. And I was staying in one of these hotels. And I said at the little talk I gave, you all are going to have a problem. Because the hotel was an entirely different environment to the environment that the ordinary people in St. Elizabeth and in Montego Bay, where I spent some time. You know, so here these young people working in these plants, these hotel plants, in a world that is straight out of the television. You know, everything you want, you get. I was in one of those what you call all-inclusive. And these young people are working there, but can't benefit. And that kind of development that we have pursued, whether it's in tourism or industrialization or other ways, we have to rethink that position. We certainly have to rethink that position. Or else we are going to not just be neo-colonial states. I think we may very well go back to a certain kind of real classic colonialism. And that is my concern, not just for Trinidad and Tobago, but the Caribbean. And what has happened with this government and its response to the American maneuvers in Venezuela has me extremely worried. I don't know if you want to respond to that or.
Yeah, well, I hope the viewers don't get the impression that we are against industrialization. The
No, not
sugarcane
at all.
industry,
Not
yeah,
at
is
all.
of course an industry. What has happened with Trinidad and Tobago is that the government didn't foresee, as I didn't predict it, but I got the cue, from Lloyd Best, who was an economist. He said, we don't have gas for these things. We're selling out the gas cheaply. And that put me on the kind of no. So that's how I was able to very powerfully challenge these 15 heavy gas-based industries. So we have now reached a stage where we are fighting up for gas. We have a lot of industries in the industrial state, but we don't have enough feedstock, that's gas, to feed them. Now, Maduro has offered us a wonderful opportunity. Sorry, President Maduro. He offered the PLM government a wonderful opportunity. You can drill for gas on our side of the border. Imagine that. On concessionary terms. We can share the assets, and you can bring in the Europeans, Shell and BP and so on, to do it. What a wonderful thing. So the question is then, why does the government take such a position of supporting America? Because here it is, you don't have gas. Maduro is offering you this wonderful opportunity. You have the whole world of gas to get so that you could diversify the economy away from super industrialization, away from gas dependence, with a proper diversification project. And you've rejected that in favor of what? So it brings me to thinking that the prime minister has an agenda, and the agenda is to get rid of Maduro, put a puppet, and get gas free. Now, what is the American agenda? The American agenda, basically, if you look at Europe and Americans and so on, they don't like to trade freely, They pilfer, they build palisades, they shoot cannons from the sea, and they basically pillage your resources. Trump is a businessman, and that's basically what he's about. He doesn't want to trade with Venezuelans to get the oil. He wants to pillage the oil. And Kamala Persad-Bissessar, our prime minister, is part of that campaign. So she has joined the imperialists. She is nothing more than an imperialist or an imperialist herself. And that's what we tied back to Macaulay. How do you explain that kind of character, that kind of person, to be so unresisting, to relent so easily, to be so supportive of this imperialistic venture? It is not just political convenience and political necessity or strategy. It has to be something deeper, and that's why I trace it to the historical roots of education and how she was educated, and the cultural education which the British provided. And it's very dangerous because you have, for example, in Guyana, East Indian leadership in Suriname, and these are the same three countries, East Indian, which are supporting this venture, or which are neutral towards it in a very positive way. So you can't really help Latin Americans saying, who are these people? Who are these brown, these white jellies and coconut husks who just reach and they're betraying Latin America? You could be forgiven for saying that because that is what's happening. So you're basically putting yourself into a barrack, into other people's eyes, a kind of as a Jewish kind of thing, the Jews. We are people who are provincial. We are isolated. We are prepared to sell out the whole of Latin America because we know the history of Latin America for a few pence, a few dollars. Not a good thing. Not a good thing at all.
I wanted to know, Breddah Doc Wayne, what keeps you grounded? What keeps you sane to keep fighting? And you've taken licks, physical licks, professional licks. I mean, I don't know how you to survive, but what keeps you fighting? I mean, with community support, because that's one of the things I learned about you in doing research. You are very clear, like that my face to say, or my voice to hear, but this upon the strength of the people, everyday people who know their stories from their communities. You might need to juke their leave it for their jump start. But once they catch fire, the people they stand firm. But what keeps you true to yourself, brother?
Well, I don't know. It's a very difficult question to answer. Maybe I'm just hazarding a guess. Maybe it is I have a very passionate anger towards what you call advantage. And now we say advantage, something advantage. So when you see people in the countryside and so on, the fishermen, the farmers, the ordinary householders being taken advantage of, or when you see the history of these imperialistic ventures, you feel a sense of outrage. So I think I'm inspired by a sense of outrage, But that cannot really work. Outrage doesn't last for long, because when you're outraged, when you die, then that's it. That's the end of that. So what I did, I produced a manifesto, a 15-year development plan for 2025 to 2040, and I gave it to all the political parties. I was very happy to do it. When I looked at what this government is doing, they produced their own plan. Something similar to mine, but there was no spirit in it. There was no passion in it. There was no belief in it. There is nobody to run it and make it work. There is no leadership team in it. So passion is very important, and spirit is very important. Leadership are very important. So I think that I like to say I'm bad mind, meaning that you don't like to lose. Like I have some of that in me. You don't want to lose at all. Like one of these football players, you just fighting. You don't want to lose at all. Some of that, I suppose, arrogance. I suppose that's it. Yeah, but also I think a genuine passion for ITIL, or genuine development. ITIL means real. Rastafari say ITIL food. It means no salt. It means no meat. It means real, nice, fresh food from the garden, direct and live, yam and tanya and so on. So ITIL development, because we've so long been fooled by false and bogus development. I tried to convert it by saying we want ITIL development. We're fighting for ITIL development. So I'm all about ITIL development and have a passion for that.
What's the vibes on the ground right now in Trinidad?
It's very, very much people are scared. They don't know what to think. Among the followers of the government, or mostly East Indians, they're supporting her up to the hilt. Hell or high water, they're supporting her. Whatever she does, they're supporting her. They basically, sorry to make this comparison, they're basically the Jews, the Nazi following that they had from 1923 to 1944 until things happened. But basically, they're following her like that. That's one segment. But there is a discriminating segment of the population, and I think they're questioning the Prime Minister. I think that most people are afraid. They feel that bullets are going to come their way shortly, and they don't know how to deal with that. Trinidad doesn't like violence. They're not a violent people. They like peace. We're very tolerant people. So I think I would say, to sum it up, I think it's a state of consternation, vexation, and confusion.
Baraka?
Well, I wanted to return to a point he made about Suriname and Guyana and the connection with the Indian populations in Suriname and Guyana. I think you put it in a history. You put it in the context of the place met. And there was a piece I was looking at in Guyana, and we are seeing a kind of and Guyana is one of the cases in the Caribbean in which there were actually violence among the ethnic groups in the Caribbean, Indians and Africans, in the 1950s. And my concern is that our ethnic composition, while it should be a strength, could be a fault line in our society. And that has always concerned me. As a member of the National Joint Action Committee, we understood this, even though people never give us credit for it, or detractors, in which we sought to develop approaches to how do we develop a better understanding of each other as ethnic groups in the society. And I am concerned that given this imperialist move in the Caribbean, that our situation could worsen. I'll tell you why. Before the conflict in Somalia, I would speak with Africans. I lived in a place in the US where a lot of Africans I used to interact with. And one of the things people would say about Somalia, for example, that what was happening in Ethiopia at the time could never happen in Somalia, because basically Somalia was a homogeneous group. Everyone could have traced their ancestry to a clan. And today, that society is very much divided and warring against itself. If you look at the situation in Ukraine, for example, a lot of Ukrainians are ethnically and culturally Russians. And yet, imperialist forces got there, and what we see now is this war between Ukraine and Russia, to the point that early in the war, I read a piece, and it was repeated on a newscast I was looking at, in which the Russian army met some Ukrainians and told them to surrender. And the Ukrainians said, "We are Russians, we don't surrender." And yet, these people are killing each other, right? Despite the closest culturally and language-wise and so on. And I am concerned that given this new imperialist maneuver in the Caribbean, we could be in for some problems in that area, given the fault lines that exist in our society. I don't know if I would like to comment on that.
Well, I would say that if you look very closely at what's happening in all of these wars that are happening now, it's always the hand of imperialism which begins it. The Ukrainians and the Russians would have settled the issue. Okay, the Russians would say, I don't really want any military bases on my border for 100, 1,200 miles. I don't want it. I don't want you to join NATO. I don't want any CIA bases. If they were left to their own to figure that out, they would have figured it out. But then the Europeans stepped in and the Americans stepped in to create a revolution, an anti-Russian revolution, anti-Russian government. And they've been constantly goading Zelensky and his government to continue the war. Send 1 million men into the machines of war, into the mills of war. You understand? So the hands of imperialism are extraordinarily dangerous. And what is disgusting about it, I suppose this is what basically makes me get going, that while they're doing this, they're in jackets and coats in the White House and in Europe, at the summits and so in the beautiful surroundings, the White Houses and the ranches and the palaces, and sipping wine and smiling like Rubio, sipping wine and smiling and creating mischief for people to die. So I could see that happening, because what's happening is I think there's going to be a revolt against the prime minister. And I think it's probably going to come from the only people who are capable of revolting against her. It's not for racist reasons, but I think it's going to come from the African crowd on the street, the non-Macaulay people on the street. And I think it's going to be, after a while, it's going to be carded as an ethnic revolt, but it's an economic revolt. It's going to be an economic revolt because the only people who are capable of really mass revolt in Trinidad and Tobago, it wouldn't be the East Indians. I think it would be people, the Africans from outside of the Macaulay circle, non-middle classes. That's where it's going to come from. But it's going to be, of course, it's going to be called a different struggle. It's going to be, like, for example, you carry the story about China. China's march through the world is irreversible, a road and belt initiative. But by 2040, 2045, you will see a world war by the West against China. Simple. Nobody wants it. The West doesn't want it. But because of the objective economic circumstances, they cannot compete. When Western capitalism cannot compete, they prefer to mash up the whole game and they abide by it. And that's what's going to happen. And all of these things, if you look at the pieces, it's basically a war, or the beginnings of a war with China. They don't want China to be here. They don't want China to be anywhere else. They want China to be contained. They've said that as a public dogma. They want to contain China. China is a threat, But basically and objectively, it is a threat to the capitalist laissez-faire system. They're not trading well. China is trading well in all fields, technology and agriculture, and building engineering. How can you beat that? It's like a juggernaut coming at you. And that's why I think there's going to be a world war between the West and China. And all of these are basically the preliminaries to the war. That's why we have to prepare ourselves. That's why we have to diversify economies and make sure that we are well sheltered and prepared for our people.
There's so many interesting things you said there.
Wait, Brother Akko. We might want to go to break because I know how we broke that thought once we start. So we're going to break real early, a few minutes early, like 3 minutes early, so that Brother Akko and Brother Doc Wayne could further this conversation. And then in this last segment, we also have to talk about the article where Brother Doc Wayne wrote about a narco state, because all this matters in a war that's going to happen. Happen. So we have to get real about the knowledge about why it happen and how it may impact we in the Caribbean and what we need to do enough for we interest because the government not designed to look after we in any Caribbean country unless it's like Cuba. Cuba is a Caribbean country. Then they have different reality. But we're going to take a quick break and come right back.
It's an massive season with massive deals and rewards at Penny's. From now through December 31st, earn double B-Bucks on store-wide purchasing every Saturday. That's right, 2 times the B-Bucks, which means 2 times the cash back when shopping at Penny's. Plus, get even more rewards with B-Bucks Builders on home goods, tiles, appliances, paints, and lights. And don't forget, there's also massive deals and discounts on tiles and the best brands in paints like Benjamin Moore and BH. Rewards, deals, B-Bucks. You can get it all this massive season only at Penny's. Quality and savings.
Want all the postpaid perks without the commitment? Now you can with Smart Supercharged prepaid plans. All the talk, text, and data you need. No contracts, no hassle. Pay upfront for your package and enjoy total freedom. No commitments. Just simple, flexible plans that fit your life. Pick your power, Core, Edge, or Prime. Prepaid plans, ready when you ready. Commit to no commitments and get yours today. Dial 7526 or *100 key, use the Smart app, or visit a Gimme Dollar agent to purchase today. Smart, bringing people together.
Technology in education is not simply about modern tools. It is about expanding human potential. When we introduce digital learning into our schools, we are helping our students develop critical thinking skills and skills in communication. We're increasing your creativity and problem-solving skills as well. And these are the building blocks of human development, and it helps in preparing young people to contribute meaningfully to their communities and to the wider world.
We have our first ever smart classroom. We extend our gratitude and appreciation for making our dreams become reality.
This smart classroom is going to be helping you guys to be able to put your thoughts together, to further develop greater ideas for the development of this country, for the development of yourselves as well. We are now investing with you guys. This investment, it is being done today, but the results, the fruits of it is not for today. So it is who apply themselves, who work hard, will be the future leaders and the future success stories of this country.
What made me want to start my journey in terms of owning a home was basically me having my own space, my own domain, and having something extremely special for my family. That feeling was indescribable. It was amazing, you know, moving in the first time, seeing all the new furniture, the new paint, the new accessories. I was amazed. Home for the holidays means to me bonding with my family, having an amazing time in the Christmas spirit. I would highly recommend Atlantic Bank's personal loans for home renovations because of what it did for me. I fixed my kitchen, I fixed my storage, I fixed my master bedroom, my showers, you name it, I fixed it.
Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
Country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This
Yeah, Brother Akka, Breddah Doc Wayne. And they're going to finish that conversation that they started in the second segment. Brother Akka, you remember Poemade?
I was asking him about this situation. Oh, the question I wanted to ask is a statement he made about a revolt in Trinidad, and which he thinks will emerge from the African population. And that is my concern, that if only one segment of the society sees this as a problem and the other segment doesn't see it as a problem, and then perceives this as an attack on their interests, what situation are we in?
Well, we're in a situation of chaos. Sister just said something. I could have almost jumped up like a Haitian fan after that World Cup victory, or Curacao fan, and hugged her.
Mm-hmm.
She said, the government can't take care of our interests in a situation of decline. The people have to do it. Is that true, sister? Yeah, she said that.
Yes.
And that's what's happening. And I'm not too pessimistic about it, because I think Trinidadians and Tobagonians have become a very passive people, a very superficial people, a very ostentatious people. They have lost what, the Black Power used to say, conscious.
Yeah.
Conscious brother, a conscious sister.
Yeah.
They've lost consciousness. That's why we could do something like that with Venezuela, and most people supporting it. We have lost consciousness. And if it takes a mini revolt or revolt to get back things in order, that is what Shakespeare is about. You have to, the state, the court has to collapse before a right-hand woman or man could take over. So I'm not overly, Trinidadians sit in traffic for hours. They do nothing about it. Nobody stands up and flings aside their dress and say, I can't stop this traffic. They just do it. They just accept it. They have bad governments successfully following one after the other. They follow. They have racist politics. They abide by it. So the place needs, to say, a historical shake-up. And if that happens, people will die, obviously, but I wouldn't be looking at it as a Buddhist person, sort of smiling and with a detached way. I was very much involved, but I think that one has to recognize the objective facts of history, and Trinidad really needs that kind of shake-up for the right people to take control of the society and manage it properly.
I couldn't agree with you more. That I have, and Sister YaYa has heard me use this term here repeatedly in describing not just Trinidad and Tobago's government, but the Caribbean, the term kakistocracy, which is government by the least suitable and least qualified people, which is what we have. And I am of the view that something catastrophic might happen, and possibly that catastrophe is what may shake us out of our mythology of this is God country, right? This is God country, and so we need something to happen, right? I'm not wishing anything bad, but you cannot continue this complacency, and everything is reduced to whining and a carnival. Every serious thing is reduced to whining and carnival. Every serious thing in the country. I remember there was a hurricane some years ago when I was in Trinidad, and I had to go look for some milk for my nephew in YaYa. I went to the shop to the village, storm, trees falling on the road. When I go in the shop, music, drinking. I said, what's happening here? People supposed to be home. They said, we're having a storm party. In another country, people will be going looking for shelter. They're threatened, and that psychology is encouraged by the elites, and we need to really, something has to happen. We can't continue like this. So I am full agreement with you on that.
I wanted you to, Breddah Doc Wayne, to talk more about the article you wrote in the Sunday Express about a narco state. Because according to the United States, that the whole reason why they didn't kill people without no due process because of narco trafficking. So and again, I thought about our brother Doris Figuera, who has dedicated his whole life when it comes to transnational crimes. So what is a narco state, and why our government, and what are the relevance of you sharing about that now?
Well, it's written in the context of the U.S. Venezuelan situation. because the United States are alleging that President Maduro is a narco-terrorist. They're alleging that Venezuela is destroying young American lives because they're shipping a lot of fentanyl, a lot of cocaine, a lot of drugs to America. So I previously wrote a lot of articles on this because I did some research. I looked at what the UN was saying. I looked at what the World Drug Agencies were saying, formal agencies. I was looking at what the United States CIA and intelligence agencies were saying. And they all agreed that Venezuela has destroyed all of its coca plantations. They all agreed that there are no fentanyl labs in Venezuela. They all agreed that Venezuela is not a significant contributor to the narco trade. They all agreed that the Cartel del Sol is a fictitious agency that they claim that President Nicolas Maduro is running. Now, that does not mean to say that there are no drugs in Venezuela. Among the army, you'd find, just like here, people who are complicit in the drug trade. You also have people on the ground who are complicit in, like Tren de Aragua, but Tren de Aragua is not supported by the state. It's antagonistic to the interests of the state, and the state has clamped down on it. So in order to shape its rhetoric to justify this war, they've made all of these claims, and our prime minister is repeating it. So they're saying that they have a narco-terrorist state there. So I said, well, okay, but they're able to be just as big as a narco-terrorist state like Venezuela, if that is the case. Let me show you what I know from what I've seen, not what I've read. Because you can't trust what you read by our economists, because they don't really know. They don't know the volume of cocaine, which is transshipped from Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, through the Pacific, going to Africa, going to Europe, or coming through the Caribbean. They don't really know the volumes. But you could feel it. You could feel a sense of buoyancy amidst a slump or near depression. But I have an experience going back, I'm 66 years old. I've always seen evidence of this narco-terrorism. A narco-terrorist state is a state in which the major institutions of the country, including the communities, the government agencies, the police, the judiciary, the businesses, the banks, the casinos, all of the historical stabilizing agencies of a community and a society have been infected or inflicted with the narcotics trade. In other words, they all get in some way or all influence, and they all get some money from the proceeds. And so it details how when I was a young boy, how everything was so stable. My grandmother, stable shopkeeper, she was owning a piece of land. My grandfather, a very powerful man, landowner, and they kept us in stability in the village. And then in the 1970s, something started to happen when you destroyed the sugar industry, when Texaco began to decline and was not well taken care of. When I said the white man left and the black people took over, and they started, sorry to say that way, but they weren't as proper and as organized as the Texans. And so you could see the gradual infiltration, like a drug, like an IV drug, coming into society. And I trace it to the local mafia, who would also bring in bullets in a bucket from Venezuela. Not from Venezuela, I could other way, but bring in bullets in a bucket. American weapons and American bullets, where he's getting it from, I can't really see. He is jailed for murder, not for drugs, but all his surplus guns and so on, he sells to the community. He's conducting business with the law, he's conducting business with police, he's conducting business with the casinos on his cell phone. He makes millions of dollars, he sends people to the casino to lose their bets, in an attempt to clean his money. So the banks collect the casino money and spread it out. They multiply the money supply in the community, in the society, and everybody therefore becomes inflicted. And he's just a small trader. And then there's a large, well-established traders. So through and through, Trinidad is a narco-terrorist state. So when the Prime Minister is claiming that Venezuela is, she has a lot of business to do on her own here.
And if you get some water, Brother Wayne?
Yeah, so it's very interesting, that analogy, because we can trace even before the collapse of the refinery and other places. In 1970, I was a senior member of the National Joint Action Committee, and we were able to trace the arrival of drugs into the country at a point to neutralize the movement that was emerging, right? Cocaine and LSD and so on, right? And there is very strong evidence based on some of the COINTELPRO reports and so on, that the United States intelligence agencies use drugs as a means to neutralize progressive and radical movements in the Caribbean. The other factor is relative to Trinidad, is the Scott drug report. It was a former judge of the High Court led an inquiry into drugs in Trinidad, which fingered senior police officers, government officials, and business elites. And nothing ever came out of the Scott drug report. So this pretext that somehow Venezuela is this problem, right? It is really a fallacy that the United States is known whenever possible and in many instances to use drugs as a means of neutralizing progressive movements. It happened in the United States. It happened in the Iran-Contra affair, in which they sold drugs in a particular community in Los Angeles, and the proceeds of that was used to supply arms to the country. So all of these things are documented, and yet our political leaders, and in particular case ours in Trinidad, which means is a shameful episode in Trinidad and Tobago, seem to be unaware or unwilling to acknowledge these historical realities,
I just wanted to add to that, brother. You're absolutely correct. When Mr. Trump was campaigning in the elections, he felt great pity for the persons who were dying from fentanyl in the United States. And this is not just in the urban places or in the middle of America, what they call the middle cities or the urban cities, It was in the countryside, gentry, white gentry, people dying. So when he comes down, he's using drugs as a campaign to destabilize Venezuela, destabilize the Caribbean, and to get free oil. He's basically not just jeopardizing, but he's basically betraying this promise, not only the promise, but the people who are dying daily in America. You understand? And it's very, very pathetic. See so many people in America dying of drugs on a daily basis, and you have him and Rubio basically creating a myth and abusing the war on drugs rather than deal with the drug problem in America. I know a lot of young people in America have died. And when we say the empire, we don't really mean the American people. Don't get us wrong. We don't mean we hate America. We don't mean we hate American people. No. Just as we have elites, America has an elite, which Trump used to call the deep state, but now he's turned and joined the deep state. So America and the people of the Caribbean suffer the same problem. They have an elite which is not managing the people's business. They were financial. When all of this money is spent in Venezuela and all of these big ships and $10 million a year, whatever, it is the people who are funding that. It's people who are funding it, but it is funded at the behest of and to the benefit of the industrial military complex. They're not losing out. And that is what makes the surplus capital, makes the elites get bigger and bigger. So they have the same problem. And I think one of the points that we have to point out is that any revolution in the Caribbean and Latin America, for it to hold, I think that there must be first a revolution in the United States of America. And that is what the American people need to know, that we are on their side and that we are the same dilemma. And there has to be, there ought to be a revolution in the United States if this whole thing has to change. If the Machiavellians have to be dispersed and I wouldn't say gotten rid of, that sounds violent, but dispersed and taken away from the helms of power in our society.
Before I get, because it's already 11:47, my final thoughts, I wanted to bring back a conversation we had during the break. Is this the last leg of the Western imperialist empire? I'm asking Brother Wayne, and I asked Brother Akona 2 cents for that.
Well, I wouldn't be too long. Well, I think it is not the last leg. I think what's happened is that they're going to fight. They will try to mash up the game, the Chinese and the Russian and the Cuban, and they were trying to mash the game up. It was a game of marbles, and they cannot win it. So they cannot win it, so they will try to mash it up. And it's like, as I said, a Shakespeare play. In the last throws of the court, he tears his hair out and he starts making these fantastic speeches. So they're going to misbehave, and they're going to try their best to subordinate China, but they're not going to succeed. So I think before that last leg comes, we're going to have a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of bloodshed, a lot of wars, a lot of trials and tribulations, and the war is not going to be, it's not going to be nice. It's going to be a very primitive war, as Einstein said. You know, he doesn't know what the Third World War is going to be fought with, but he knows that the Fourth World War is going to be fought with sticks and stones. So it's going to be a horrible mess, and I don't think objectively that Europe and America are going to give up. They're going to fight because the system is under threat. You know, it's not about what I feel or they feel, but objectively, that's the course that history is taking. It's not the last leg. It's basically the first leg in a long denouement, in a long dissolution of global civilization. And then things will have to start from thence. Restart from thence. Sorry to be so pessimistic, but I think that's what I see.
Thanks, Brother Akko.
So just to follow up, he referred to the military-industrial complex, and what some people are saying now, it is not. It is MIMAC, the military, industrial, media, and academic complex, in that all of it is coalesced into a single system. It is always was, but some played, played deceptive rules. No, the deception is stripped. It is one single entity, and so right now, you can't even trust academia, and you certainly can't trust the media. This is why so many people are getting their information from alternative sources, right? There's a theory that has been put out by some people. First, Larry Johnson, who was the former CIA officer, who's a frequent YouTuber, and what he was saying is that if you want to stop drugs in the US, clamp on the banks, because he said the banks know, and he as a CIA officer, he said he worked in Mexico and saw how the drugs came. He said big companies, legitimate companies, were being used to launder drugs and drug money into the United States through the banks. So he's saying, you're going after Venezuela, you're going after Colombia, the problem is in the US. That's where you have to stop it, right? And the other theory is this zero-sum game. There's some who believe that the West cannot beat China. So what they would like to do is to destroy everybody and hope that they could start ahead. And so it may sound pessimistic, but we have to be, realistic, objective on what is happening. We are seeing human beings being used as guinea pigs, as sacrificial lambs in so many instances. And it's not just the war. I mean, even the food that we are consuming. As a friend of mine said, he lives in a place near KFC, in a prominent area in Atlanta. And he said he was looking at how much cars they could sell food to in a short space of time. He said to me, that's not food, that's a product. It's not food, it's a product. And so all of these things, whether it is medicine and food, all of these things are happening. And this is part of the process of trying to maintain this hegemonistic control that they have had for years. Something is going to happen. As we spoke about Gramsci, talking about the old world dying, it is not going to collapse in one sweep, possibly not, but it may be what some refer to as a long goodbye. It is slowly going to decay. And, if you are in a place where bodies are decaying, there are many diseases you can catch, and that is what I think we have to understand as this thing changes in the world that we now live in.
We have another 7 minutes, so let me get final thoughts from both of you. We'll give our guest, Breddah Doc Wayne Kublalsingh, the opportunity to share his final thoughts with us this morning, please.
Yeah, well, I think that if in the event that people consider that the perspectives that Brother Akko and I shared are accurate, we only have one choice for Belize, for Trinidad and Tobago, and that is to make sure that the populations are protected. Make sure that you develop your food systems, your medical systems, your anti-greenhouse gas effect systems, what you call it, your vital systems in the economy, your legal systems, your security systems, that they're working. Because ultimately it will be every man to himself, because when the whole order crumbles, it will be very, very difficult. And therefore, small societies, which may not even get touched by the battles, it may not even get touched, it might be on the periphery. We have to ensure, but trading links will be certainly cracked. Internet links will be certainly crushed. So we therefore have to develop what I refer to as resilience and diversification of economies under strong leadership. So there is a role for people even now to assume in Belize, in Trinidad and Tobago, in the Caribbean, small countries like ours, to make sure that you have resilient systems to face not only global warming or the effects of global warming, but the effects of incoming war. And you really have to make sure that during that time, your pharmaceutical industry is in place, that your food industry is in place, that your security system is in place, and that your boats and whatever it is, whatever your transportation systems and communication systems are in order. So that will probably drive us to do what we have not done before, and that is to create economic and social and political and ideological resistance.
Big thanks, Brother Doc. Brother Akko?
Well said, brother. I would say this, I agree with all he said, but I am always hopeful that somehow we'll find a way to survive. And I'll give you an example. I was living in the US when Y2K, I don't know if everybody remember that, when they said that the computer problem, the glitches that could happen, or we could shut the world down and planes couldn't fly. And so that was the year 2000. So because of this debate taking place in the US, it was a very uncertain time. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to go to Trinidad and see my mother because I didn't know if I could fly, I'm not sure. So I sat down with my mother, who was 80 years at the time, I think, yes, 70 years. And so we are talking about Y2K. So I told her, well, what do you think about this Y2K? She said, well, boy, I don't have no computer. I don't have no running water. I just catch water in a barrel, And she said, if I need to go bathe, I go bathe in the sea. So she was totally divorced from what was happening. And it made sense, whether Y2K came or not, her life was not going to change. And so the point he made about we live on the periphery and it may not affect us, but we still must prepare for any eventuality, right? Because we don't know how this thing could turn out. Because I know, for example, if they attack Venezuela, it will have these disastrous consequences for Trinidad and Tobago, which we have to be prepared for, and the rest of the Caribbean, So while I am looking at all these things emerging, I'm also placing faith in our own native and indigenous intelligence that we will come up with ways to survive and to cope with any new reality that can confront us in the Caribbean. That has been our history in the Caribbean. So I still have hope. I'm still optimistic that we will emerge some way better, right? Or in stable, at least, in any changing set of situations.
Thanks, Brother Akko. Thanks, Brother Doc Wayne. We have to thank our security guard, Shane Flowers, and XTV studio, our technical director, Dami Christy Flowers, and downstairs on the second floor at Crum Radio, we have Larry Guerrero, known as Larry G. This show will repeat at 5:30 Belize time on XTV. You could go listen to it on XTV Belize YouTube page and XTV Belize Facebook page. I can't thank you enough, Brother Akko Mutota, for inviting me, brother. I know I'm being a stranger to this place. Brother Doc Wayne Kublalsingh.
Kublalsingh.
Yeah. Say it again.
Kublalsingh.
Kublalsingh. Breddah Doc Wayne Kublalsingh. I want to get it. Big thanks, brother, for choosing to be with us. Go. Enjoy up the wedding. We are going and give people positive vibrations from Belize for our wedding. Continue, be inspired, and stay true to yourself to do the work you do for the liberation of people. And there are moments where we study and learn, because only we can represent who we interest best, because these bad governments were not designed for our liberation, mind, body, spirit. So big thanks, brothers.
One last thing I want to say. There is a statement that I believe it to some extent. They say patriots is the last refuge of scoundrels. But I will tell you, patriotism, is the last refuge of scoundrels. That is what some people say, that scoundrels usually hide behind the idea of patriotism. But I will tell you this about this brother. He's one of the few persons I consider a real patriot from Trinidad and Tobago. I've always admired his work, admired his courage, and admired his strength for standing up for what he believes in. That's what I would.
Big respect, Breddah Doc. Big thanks. Until next Sunday, only organized people will save the people.
All right.
God bless.
Thank you all very much.
Guatemala, this a GTA, we a figure. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. So no, tell me what maritime area.